So, the problem of evil is obviously a pretty heavy subject, as if none of the guys on the religious side can think of an answer, they won't have a leg to stand on. This has led to the development of several Theodicies, which are basically theories which argue a loving God's case for the existence of evil. One of these is the Augustinian Theodicy. This was formed by St. Augustine in the early 5th century. He argued that the universe is good, with a good purpose, and made by a good God, as it shows in the book of Genesis. Taking this further, he maintained that while there are different levels of goodness, everything was still, in its own way, good. Moreover, evil is not what we would describe a thing, but more what he called a privation of goodness, just as darkness is a lack of light. But then, how did evil come about? The Theodicy put forth that it is non-existent, and that it only comes from when things with free will, e.g. us, rebel against the perfection we once were. This leads to the age-old story of the fall, also in Genesis. This not only brings about moral evil, but also natural evil, as order was taken away on that day. Dun dun dun! That sounds like a pretty heavy day if you ask me. This then puts God in the right for not stopping evil, as it is kind of a punishment for us, and justice demands it. Unfortunately, if God is only just, we all end up in hell, which isn't good. But, as God is full of grace and love, he thinks up a plan. He sends his perfect Son, Jesus Christ, to die, that those who believe in him and accept him can have eternal life, thus saving us from eternal death, showing us that God is still all-loving. How good is that? But, does this Theodicy work? Well, it clears God of all the accusations thrown at him against his existence, and puts all the responsibility on us instead, which somehow makes all the religious dudes quite happy. But there is a problem. How could evil come out of a perfect world? Friedrich Schleiermacher claimed this was a logical contradiction, and that if God was ultimately awesome, then he would have made the perfect universe without any teeny tiny bits of evil in it at all. Angels and humans would have no trace of evil in them, and would never choose to do a non-perfect thing at all, just like Jesus and stuff. Plus, if when the world was perfect there was no knowledge of good and evil, how would we choose to do evil? And then following on from that, how would we have free will? Well, let's take a look at God's love. He wants to have a loving relationship with us, but that requires us to be able to choose or reject him, so that we can freely choose him. Consequently, God gave us free will. Woo! Another criticism is how it doesn't really agree with science. Augustine's view is that humanity has gone downhill, while evolution shows that things have gone uphill, unless you would argue that the first cell was absolute perfection. Plus, with food chains and stuff, it seems pretty set that one animal will need to suffer for the other to live, which doesn't really sound like an omniscient God. But, if God gave nature free will, then that might explain it, as it could be just nature practicing its own free will. Finally, while Augustine described evil as not an actual thing, many would disagree with mental images of Satan and hell and other stuff. And the very existence of hell doesn't really fit with a loving God, as punishing us for something he knew we were already going to do doesn't really sound that pretty. But still, this Theodicy is what a lot of religious guys agree with, and it is a pretty popular classical theistic response. So yeah, that is one of the main Theodicies, which is the Augustinian Theodicy.